Hey, good to hear that music on this Wednesday afternoon, and that means it's time for Helping Seniors of Brevard. I'm John Harper. Let's get today's show underway as I introduce to you the host of the program and the Executive Director of Helping Seniors of Brevard. Here is Kerry Fink.
Thank you, John Harper, and always it's a pleasure to be here with you on the radio each Wednesday as we get together for Helping Seniors Radio, 12 noon to 1 p.m. right here on 90.3 FM WEJF, and also hello to those of you who tune in online at wejf.net and those who catch us later as a podcast, wherever you catch fine podcasts, every place like Apple iTunes to Spotify to iHeartRadio, and many more. So on behalf of Joe Steckler, our president and founder, Nancy Deerdorf, our operations director, and our most excellent volunteer board of directors, want to welcome you to the Helping Seniors Radio Hour. And we have somebody who is a long time, I would actually call you kind of a founding member of the Helping Seniors organization, because you were there helping Joe, first of all, in his Brevard Alzheimer's days. You actually got Joe into his TV career of hosting all those TV shows for so many years. And then today you still help us along with everything we try to accomplish in the Helping Seniors world, which only gets more and more meaningful and more important day by day. But I'm speaking of longtime friend of Helping Seniors, Dr. Lee Sheldon. He's a noted area periodontist. I like to jokingly call him the father of dental implants. And usually he doesn't mind that too much. Lee, how are you today?
Good, Kerry. How are you? I'm actually the father of Dr. Matthew Sheldon, so I'll claim credit for that, as well as the father of Stephanie Winterkorn and of Daniel Sheldon. So I like that father the best.
Well, you've helped a lot of people in a lot of ways over the years. And I want to encourage you, if you're new to the show, if you go to helpingseniors.brevard.org, or if you go to our YouTube channel, Helping Seniors of Brevard, or our Facebook page, Helping Seniors of Brevard, you can see lots of shows that Dr. Sheldon has contributed over the years. Many pertain to dental. I mean, you're the author of this, really, I call it, it's a great manual, I think, that you wrote, helping people understand the whole dental process. Talk about that for just a minute. I know you keep revising it, but you know, you've done so much good to educate so many people about all these mouth things, but then you also do all these other things that have helped us along the way in the Helping Seniors, because you're an expert at nutrition and things like that. But back to it's called the complete, what did you call the book?
The Ultimate Mouth Manual.
The Ultimate Mouth Manual.
That's right. And I wrote that in 2012, and I've revised it twice, actually revised it with the other doctors, with Dr. Michelle Furtado and Dr. Matt Sheldon. And so it's in the third edition. And if somebody puts a pin in my rear end, maybe I'll get the fourth edition done. Because there are so many new things, Kerry, so many new things we're doing with the technology that we have here. It's you know, I left active dental practice almost 8 years ago, and not that I'm not here, but I don't do the work anymore. To see the changes that have occurred, the technological changes that have occurred, as well as the prosthetic and the surgical changes that have occurred, it's just amazing. I never told you about this. Matthew may have told you about it on the TV show. I'm not sure. But we attracted a laboratory technician down that had been practicing in a major practice in Boston. And he came down here about a year and a half ago, which has just opened up opportunities for our patients because of the skill level of the Paul provides. So there are a lot of good things happening right here in little old Brevard County.
You know, as you were talking about how much things have moved through the years, one thing that I think is kind of foundational, Dr. Sheldon, and I mean this sincerely, because I remember it must have been, maybe it was the first edition, because Helping Seniors is now in its 12th year. And I remember the very first time that I met you, you were kind enough to give me a copy of the Ultimate Mouth Manual. And I thought, oh, this is going to be boring, like medical reading. You know, it's like one of those textbooks that you used to have to maybe look at in an upper grade of high school or college even. But I found it was incredibly easy to read through, and understand. And it really kind of helped me get a sense of some of the things. And I think one of the things that's so important, Dr. Sheldon, is the importance of being a great communicator. And you're able to take these very complicated kinds of technical things that you understand completely from a medical dental perspective as a periodontist, but then you're able to break it down and make it possible for mere ordinary mortals who haven't been to dental school to really follow. And I think that's a gift you have.
Well, I've had the opportunity to communicate throughout my entire career on radio, on TV, giving lectures and that type of thing. And you get better and better at it. But still, there are things that I figure everyone knows, everyone in quotes, that everyone doesn't know. And so in that first edition, I actually had two editors. One was Jude Peterson. She was in Copenhagen, Denmark, and she went through it. Now, she's originally from the United States, but I hired her because somebody else I knew had hired her. And she went through the entire book, the first edition. And then if that wasn't good enough, then Eleanor, my wife, went through it again. So we wanted to make sure that this book communicated. It's such a thrill, Kerry, when patients come in and say, I've already read your book cover to cover. Wow. It was a labor of love. It was still a labor. I mean, this took some time to do, but the whole idea is that dentistry is often hidden. It's behind the lips, and you kind of are hearing terms from dentists and from hygienists and even from friends as to what was done or what you're going to get. I won't put in the terms right now because I don't want to confuse everybody. I wanted to get every one of those terms out there and get those terms explained so that patients could understand that. And so I'm not the greatest artist in the world, but I even started drawing pictures in order to be able to make sure that people had the opportunity of seeing what the meaning of each of the terms are. If you don't understand the terms, then you blank out, you get lost, and we wanted to make sure that everything was well defined, and then the procedures were explained in enough detail, but in appropriate language that everybody could understand it, and at least they could listen to it, or they could read it, and they could ask questions based on a position of knowledge, which is the whole idea. Dentistry is expensive, and dentistry can be done well, and sometimes it can not be done not so well. We're going to concentrate that a little bit on the ethics part of it today, which we don't talk about very much, but I think it's important. It's important then that you be a wise consumer. Joe has talked about that for years, and of course you carry that. You carry that message as well. We're not just talking about an aging plan. We are talking about a plan from knowledge, and the only way you're going to get knowledge is to at least find people that you can trust and that you understand, and be able to read and understand what's going on. There are so many times when things can be recommended, and I'm not just talking about in dentistry. This is in any field. Things can be recommended, and maybe the professional has made recommendations with all good intentions, but it just doesn't fit what you need and what you want. So we've got to be prepared to be able to take responsibility for every aspect of our lives. And when we look at dental care, that's a blind field for many people. So that was the purpose of the book. The book is still available. Anybody who wants the book, just write to me at Dr. Lee at solidbite.com, DRLEE at solidbite.com. I'll get a PDF of the book out to you right away.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, thank you for that. And I was going to say, as you were talking about that, as you know, Joe has talked for years about creating an aging plan, and we've kind of tried to make it feel a little bit more lighthearted, and we call it getting your ducks in a row. But as we've been running down those tracks and trying to help people plan a little bit ahead so they can really enjoy the best quality of life possible at any stage, is really one of those things that we've also come up with a corollary, which we call don't don't try it on your own. Now, in the case of dentistry, I don't think I would hope you wouldn't go to a YouTube channel and try to figure out how to do your own dental process. But certainly, like when we talk, for example, with Bill Johnson, who's a board certified elder law attorney, he talks about how people will come in with documents that they thought they were doing the right thing online and tried to work out. And then at a time of real crisis, it's a terrible time to learn that isn't going to work for you at all. And kind of that same logic model follows through to what we're going to talk about today on the radio, because, Dr. Sheldon, I opened the show calling you kind of like the father of dental implants, but you've also done shows where you've said, we have a show out there. It's a TV show called "Are Too Many Teeth Being Extracted?" and then one that you've also done shows where you've talked about dental implants aren't always the answer, and that's why I thought today's title is even maybe more provocative coming from a periodontist. When the title of the show is it possible I don't need periodontal treatment?
Yeah, it's, coming from a periodontist. So now I've said, is it possible the dental implants aren't necessary? And now is it possible that everything I do isn't necessary either? And the answer is, yeah. Sometimes you just don't need it.
Wow.
Yeah, this is a tough topic. You know that I'm part of a group of senior periodontists who are publishing, and we have another article that's coming out in the Journal of the American Dental Association shortly.
Wow.
Talking about the importance of periodontal care and the thoroughness of periodontal care, and make sure that there are certain parameters that everyone should look at, and we shouldn't just keep patients who have active periodontal disease and keep them active. There are times, and we've talked about this on the air a few times, where the patient needs a periodontist, or they at least need advanced dental periodontal care, whether it's done by a periodontist or whether it's done by a well-trained general dentist, but they just sit and they get their teeth cleaned or root planed every 3 months, and things just continue to get worse and worse and worse rather than go to the next level of care. It's the reason teeth are lost, because if care is given but the care is inadequate, then all right, I'm getting a service done and I'm paying for a service, or your insurance company is paying for a service, but if it's not getting done thoroughly, if it's not getting done right, then you've got services with no results. So that's the thrust of our research group, and we're going to the literature and substantiating everything we've done, and it's been fairly well received. Not in all circles, by the way, but it's been fairly well received. But what about the other side of the coin? What about when something's recommended to you and it's not necessary? It's not necessary at all. So this has happened, and I haven't talked about this. This is the first time we're talking about it, and there'll be an article about this in Senior Scene magazine.
Yes.
That'll be in the May edition. Is that right?
That's correct. It'll be for May.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that. And I sent this essay to my research group, and one of them came right back and said, "You got guts to even say that." So good, I've got guts. It's fine, and I'm sure if I went onto a major broadcast network, then people might yell at me. But I'm protected. I'm protected in Brevard County. There are profit motives in dentistry, and people sell things, and they sell things that may not be necessary. And that happens in my profession. It happens in every profession. It happens in the medical profession. It happens all over. There's always a question, what happens if I don't do this? Frankly, the number of times that people have come in and I've said, you don't need this. It happens a lot. Wow. So if you talk to my dental assistants, people said, I've had periodontal treatment recommended. I've been told that I need deep cleaning, or I need scaling or root planing, or whatever you want to call it. And I look at the patient barely needs cleaning.
Wow.
Then people are expecting to see me as a specialist, and we've got all the fancy equipment and all that kind of stuff and all the training, and it's going to be really expensive. And they've had thousands of dollars worth of care necessary. And I say, yeah, about $160 will take care of it, and that's it.
Wow.
There is a problem there. And so in the article that I've written in Senior Scene, and in our discussion today, let's talk about when you might want to say no, or at least ask enough questions that you know whether, in fact, what's being recommended to you is appropriate, because people are looking at the bottom line, and sometimes there is a lack of ethics going on here, or questionable ethics, or maybe bad training, whatever it is, and things are recommended to you. And I'm not just talking about periodontal care. There's other care that's recommended that may not be necessary. Sometimes no care is better than care, particularly if the care isn't necessary at all.
Yeah, well, I'm actually looking at the first line of the article that's coming out. Again, it's the May edition in the Helping Seniors newsletter, which you'll always find center section of your free copy of Senior Scene magazine. There's John Frederickson, who publishes that, gets out someplace up to about 14,000 copies of that magazine every month. You can find it 500 locations around the county, free of charge. You can always find the Helping Seniors newsletter on our website, Helping Seniors of Brevard, and you can read the digital copy always at seniorscenemag.com. But the first line of your article, Dr. Sheldon, says, they say I need a deep cleaning. Do I? And I was thinking about this personally, because I am a person who does need those deep cleanings. But I imagine that it's an interesting question, because a lot of times if you just go to, quote, a regular dentist and they say, oh, we need to do some deep cleaning, I don't even know that for most of us, we really understand what that means. And maybe that's an interesting place to jump off is, why would you question that recommendation?
You question it because, well, let's go back to what deep cleaning means, which is, it's a generic term. Everybody does not need a deep cleaning. Deep means how far below the gum line do you have bacteria that needs to be removed? In a healthy mouth, you can only go down 3 millimeters below the gum line. That's it. If you take that probe and you hear us calling out numbers, a healthy area is 3 millimeters. If you have disease, usually it's 4 millimeters, 5 millimeters, or bigger than that, or the pocket is deeper than that. Mm-hmm. So if the question is, or the statement is you need a deep cleaning, the question you would ask is, what is my pocket depth? Mm-hmm. And if the pocket depth is 4 millimeters or more, then a deep cleaning may be appropriate. But if the pocket depth is 3 millimeters or less, and we measure we make 6 measurements on the tooth, where that probe is gently, and I emphasize gently, this can be a very comfortable examination, where the probe is placed between the gum and the tooth, and it's like a ruler, a very thin ruler that goes between the gum and the tooth, and we place that probe down until we reach some kind of attachment. Something stops us, and call out the number. If the number is 3 or less, then I'd be hard-pressed to say that you would need a deep cleaning.
Wow!
Because because there's no damage. You've lost nothing. The bacteria isn't deeper than that. The bacteria can't get any deeper than that because there's an attachment between the gum and the tooth that's preventing the bacteria from getting deeper than that.
We've talked about this along the way, because I know in the history of your practice, in the early days, you would talk often, a lot of times, about how patients would be referred to your office as a periodontist. They'd gone to a regular dentist, and the dentist says, we need you to see our periodontist, and so they refer you to you. And then I've heard you talk in a lot of different cases along the way where you said now it's really become people oftentimes are coming, or maybe most often are coming directly. And especially now that your son is a general dentist, and you have also Dr. Sheldon Furtado on staff as another excellent periodontist. I mean, so now you're actually able to handle all these things. But the question I wanted to ask you was your experience. Like, people come in, do you as a periodontist see cases where people come in and say, I think I need a deep cleaning, or I was told I need a deep cleaning, and then you actually discover that's not necessarily actually the case?
Yes.
Wow. What do you say to the patient then?
I've tried to come up with words. By the way, Michelle has developed quite a referral practice in this office.
Oh, wow.
So where I went the other way, I went independent. Michelle is now president of the Brevard County Dental Society. He's establishing relationships with general dentists. And so we're seeing referrals. And of course, if you're referred by the general dentist, then we do the periodontal work and you go back to your general dentist for your regular dentistry. So we are seeing it in both sides. I think last week we actually had more referrals than patients coming in directly off the street. So it's a refreshing change. It's different, and this is the new generation taking over.
Sure.
But, if a patient comes in, they're coming in for a second opinion to me for some reason, and it's nice. I love that reason. They say, you've been around here for a long time, and I've read your Google reviews, or I know of your reputation. I was told I need periodontal work. I wanted to go to you and see whether I need it or not. So they're already coming to me with the question. They want to know whether they need it or not, or in fact, if they do need it, they want a periodontist to do it because that's what we're trained to do. So they're prepared both ways. I think I shouldn't say quite that. I think they go in asking me how much deep cleaning do I need. I think the surprise is you don't need any deep cleaning at all. That is a surprise to the patient.
Right.
And I don't take that lightly. Maybe the patient had a lot of inflammation when the patient saw the general dentist, and the patient brushed and flossed and did a whole lot of stuff, and the inflammation that the general dentist was seeing, by the time the patient saw me 2 weeks later, everything was gone. It could be that. Which, by the way, if it is that, then the patient also didn't need deep cleaning. All they needed to do was take care of their teeth better, and they were able to take care of the entire problem themselves without professional help. I mean, that's even better. So it's difficult to answer the question, but at this age, they expect me to be direct. Everybody expects me to be direct. I mean, when I go to lectures in other parts of the country and people see me, they expect me to be direct. And, that has pluses and minuses in terms of my popularity among certain organizations. But that's just the way it rolls. We just had an entire office here from Delaware. And they just left this morning. They were here with us yesterday and this morning. Because they have the same questions, and the same thing occurs in those offices that occurs here. So how do you answer the question? And the answer is you answer the question directly. There's too much. I shouldn't say too much. There's plenty of dentistry that needs to be done. There are a lot of people who need dentistry, but there are also a lot of people who don't need some of the services that are being recommended. And I think, if I dare say, and somebody would certainly take issue with me, but it's what I see. I think sometimes people just assume that periodontal disease is prevalent in everyone. It's actually, depending upon where you look, it's anywhere between 42 and about 50% of adults in the United States have it. Well, that means there's 50% of the people in the United States that don't have it. So, be careful when such a recommendation is done. If you have pockets and you have bacteria that's stuck on the root surface below the gum line because you've lost bone support, a deep cleaning might be the way to start. But if you don't, you don't.
Right. So we're talking with periodontist Dr. Lee Sheldon. We'll be back for the second half of Helping Seniors Radio in just a moment. Stay with us.
And the song String of Pearls gets us underway for the second half of Helping Seniors of Brevard. I'm John Harper. Let's get things underway here as I reintroduce to you the host of the show and the executive director of Helping Seniors of Brevard. Here's Kerry Fink.
Thank you, John Harper. It's good to be back for the second half of the Helping Seniors radio program right here on 90.3 FM WEJF. And we're happy to be here, honored to be here, pleased to be here every Wednesday, lunchtime, 12 noon to 1 p.m. And hello. Also, if you're listening online, WEJF.net and or continuing on in the podcast. We've been having a really good conversation with a longtime friend of the Helping Seniors organization. His name is Dr. Lee Sheldon. He's noted area periodontist with the practice Dr. Sheldon and Furtado, and often referred to as Solid Bite. And Dr. Sheldon, as we were talking about this topic, that's really pretty unusual that we would be talking about, considering that you are a periodontist and that the title of the program is it possible that I don't need periodontal treatment? Before we jump back in, I want to make sure people know how to reach your office if something that we're talking about sparks a thought or a question. Or we talked in the first part of the program about the Ultimate Mouth Manual and some of the other things. How would people reach your office?
Best way is to call our office, 321-259-8000, and tell people you heard us on Helping Seniors of Brevard Radio, and you'll be able to get the entire examination, CT scan, x-rays, all the things you need for a donation of $50 to Helping Seniors of Brevard.
You know, I like that. In fact, I was just telling a neighbor friend of ours who was complaining about having gone to a couple of different locations trying to get something done for their mouth. And I said, a really good way for you to solve this, so you could help our charity keep going too, is you'll get a straight answer, and you'll probably really appreciate getting some clarity about what's going on in your situation there as well. And so that's, I don't know, I think at one time you called it Solid Bite Gives Back, but I love the program because from the consumer's perspective, you're coming in and getting a very, very comprehensive, I think you said it's like a $400 or $500 exam, and you're literally just making a donation into the Helping Seniors charity, which helps us keep going. But it also gives you, as the doctor, the dentist's office, the opportunity to really see what's going on for that person, so you can make some effective recommendations.
I do, and it's the all three doctors do examinations, but most or at least many of them, many of the patients see me. That's what I do. That's what I do in this practice, and I actually love doing it. I'm almost 73, and it's giving me the opportunity of staying within a profession that I love. As you know, I teach within the profession, as well as teach the consumers I do here, and it gives me an opportunity of staying there without doing the backbreaking work. So I like being here. The staff is fantastic. It was just giving a lecture to the group that had come here from Delaware, and we happened to get 3 fantastic Google reviews over the weekend. And it always talked about the staff, and it talked about how people are being helped. And there was one that said, Dr. Matt Sheldon gave me less expensive alternatives to consider. So all of these accolades were, I love the staff. I love coming here. Nobody loves coming to a dental office. I understand that. But when you can be smiling and laughing and know you're going to feel comfortable and walk in and walk out and have a good experience, it makes all the difference, certainly to me as well as to all of us. I started this practice in 1980. It's a long time ago. And to see the practice to continue to roll, and we're as busy, if not busier, than we've ever been. It's very satisfying at this point in my career.
No, that's terrific. And, but I think the point that I wanted to kind of get at is, as Helping Seniors, we operate the county senior information helpline. So we're quite used to people calling, with challenges or problems or things like that. And we do our very best to try to to make some sense out of it, or at least advance the case or find some way that we can improve the situation. But the other half of what we really try to do is get people ahead of the curve by getting information in their hands so they can make good advanced decisions. And, as I was joking at the start of the show, Joe is, ever since I've known him, he's talked about the need to make an aging plan, which I liken to a hurricane plan. Doesn't mean you want a hurricane. It just means you want to be prepared. And that's what we talk about when Joe is talking about an aging plan. But we call it getting your ducks in a row. But the corollary that we add to it is don't try this on your own. And so the problem is, we don't know enough about our mouth, as an example. So when we go to a dentist's office, it's a little bit intimidating. We're probably feeling a little bit stressed anyway, because we don't really understand everything that's being said to us. We may be a little bit afraid of painful aspects of this. We're probably definitely afraid of the cost aspects at some level. And so I really like the analogy, the mouth is a mystery to most of us. But how can we, as a consumer, tell if we're getting the appropriate treatment? Because again, our topic is how to, is it possible I don't need that treatment for
If you have periodontal pockets, it means that there is damage to the bone that supports the tooth. And so now the tooth that was supposed to have been embedded in bone, now that part of the root surface is dirty. It has bacteria within it and on top of it. When you have that kind of bone damage and bone loss, that's usually measured in terms of pocket depth, where we take that probe that we discussed earlier, and we place the probe below the gum line, and we probe below the gum line. We may get a little bit of bleeding, and we certainly get a rough root surface because it has this hard bacteria called calculus embedded within it. If you have that, and the numbers that the dentist or the hygienist is calling out are 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, then that means that the root, which was formerly embedded in bone, is now dirty, and at least that part of the root is dirty, and we have to get that root cleaned off. That's when we need something that's more advanced than just a plain old regular cleaning. If instead, when those pocket depths are done and you're hearing numbers of 3 millimeters or less, it's less likely that that pocket is infected, that it has bacteria within it and doesn't require the same skill level and the time level for a deep cleaning. So that would be a regular cleaning. Now, there are times when you can probe and the bacteria is at the gum line and you're not brushing and you're not flossing, or at least you're not brushing or flossing well, and the gum swells. So the gum tissue is actually bigger than it should be. Sometimes you can get a pseudo pocket or a false pocket of 4 millimeters or sometimes 5 millimeters, and that's because you haven't cleaned very well. Or maybe you haven't had your teeth cleaned in 4 or 5 or 10 years, and that can be the reason. So we can't solve all the problems that occur in a patient who doesn't take care of his or her mouth. And a patient taking care of his or her mouth, which means flossing once a day and getting every surface clean, and brushing and making sure that every surface is reached with a toothbrush. And if you're not sure, look in the mirror. Use an electric brush, look in the mirror, and see where the brush is going. And make sure you're touching every surface of every tooth. If it's a false pocket or a pseudo pocket, and you get those areas clean, those pockets are going to get better all by themselves. You can save yourself a lot of money. I'm not recommending that you don't see dentists, and you're right. The idea is don't do this yourself, but you do have to do brushing and flossing yourself, and you can get rid of it. Now, if you get bleeding, that's a good sign. That means that when you brushed and when you flossed, that means you've reached some bacteria that's probably been sitting there for years.
Wow.
If you get that stuff out, It may bleed the first day. It may bleed the second day. By day 3 or day 4, that bleeding will be gone because you've removed the bacteria, the plaque that's against the gum line. You've done that. You've done that all by yourself. Wow. If you can do that and the gum tightens up and we probe it and we don't get a pocket and there's no bleeding anymore, then you've solved your own periodontal problem.
So really, well, that would remind me, because we make every TV, radio show, and article. We always make sure they're available on the Helping Seniors of Brevard website at helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. And again, on the YouTube site, which is the YouTube channel is probably more correctly at Helping Seniors of Brevard, and the same on Facebook. And I was actually smiling when you were talking about that, because we did a show literally that kicked off this year on the radio where we were talking about dental New Year's resolutions. And you were talking about the importance of getting some of these home step cares correctly. And so I think that's a great one to refer somebody back to, actually, to take a look. But to kind of carry this whole discussion a little farther, when we're talking about, is it possible I don't need periodontal treatment and somebody's been recommended for it? Does the insurance company benefits have anything to do in this whole mix? Or, because
I think we get into, when we're getting into ethic situations, and this was the other side of the coin, Kerry, where we've been talking about the papers that our group has been publishing, and that is where the roots continue to be dirty, and yet the insurance company pays for root planing, which is a more expensive procedure. They might pay for it every 2 years. So yeah, insurance company benefits do enter into that. I think if a patient is getting inadequate care, and that means they're getting deep cleanings every 2 years or whenever the insurance benefits pay for it, then it's probably time to get a second opinion from a periodontist to see, why are you getting this recurrent disease all the time? When we see a patient for what we call perioscopy, which is taking the scope, going down below the gum line where we can see the root surface and get it clean, there are very few people who have to repeat that procedure in their lifetimes. In other words, once you get the root clean, the gums heal and everything's okay. And now we're just seeing you for regular cleanings just to maintain that and take care of the areas that you may miss. So deep cleaning should only have to be, now there are times we have to repeat. It isn't 100%, but in a periodontal office where we're seeing really the worst of the worst, it might be an event where we have to repeat a scaling a few years later. That may happen only a handful of times in a periodontal practice. So if you keep on getting deep cleanings, every time a deep cleaning is recommended, or every time the insurance pays for it, then the first question I'd ask is the cleaning really being done thoroughly enough? Because if it is, and you're doing a good job at home, you shouldn't have to repeat that.
Interesting. And that kind of goes into the follow-up question, which is, where do you go for a second opinion, or how do you kind of validate or verify if you're not sure?
I think whether you're getting a roof, or whether you're fixing a car, or whether you're getting dental work done, you don't necessarily have to agree or even have to listen to the first opinion. There's opportunities for discussion here. And so when a patient sees us, and I have the luxury because I'm able to spend a good deal of time with patients, and hopefully you have that opportunity as well. Do you know what I tell my assistants to do?
No.
I ask my assistants to ask the questions that you think the patient wants to ask, but is too embarrassed to do so.
That makes sense.
It does, because, it's the doctor. I don't want to bother him with that kind of a question. No, ask the questions. And, some of the questions would be, why do I need that? Well, what happens if I don't do that? I think those are appropriate questions to ask anyone. And we should be able to answer the question. I suppose that there is sometimes that some people might respond, well, I'm the doctor. Well, we could get away with that maybe a generation or two ago. At this point, we should, everything everything, whether it's medical or dental, should be able to be easily explained. Now, if you don't understand the explanation and then you keep on bugging the doctor, well, there's only so much time the doctor has, and that's where you take advantage of the assistant, or you read yourself, and that's where the Ultimate Mouth Manual comes in, where we have a book where you can read a 3-page chapter on the subject, and it should be pretty clear. I also make videos. I mean, there are a lot of things that we do in order to be able to make sure that reason for a procedure, if a procedure is indicated, is well explained, so that you have full understanding before you go into getting care itself.
That's probably one of the things that makes it a little bit frightening to us when we go to really any medical professional's office is I guess and that's probably why the trust part is so important, because we really have to rely on the competency and the good ethics, if you will, also, because so much of it is generally difficult for us to follow. Like we just can't. I mean, obviously, we can't have the level of expertise that that the professionals have. But at the same time, what you're talking about is making sure that we do our jobs as consumers to learn as much as we can to at least try to ask the right questions along the way.
Yeah. I think we talked about talking on the air about this with my wife, and my wife had seen a local professional and said, "This is a problem. You need surgery." Went to the surgeon. The surgeon confirmed the surgery needs to be done. It was going to be a fairly invasive surgery, and so we scheduled. Then I went back to the original doctor. I said, "Are you sure there isn't another way you can do it? Are you sure there's not?" I had to ask 3 times, and of course I have some knowledge because I'm in the health professions. I had to ask this doctor 3 times before the doctor finally said, "Oh yeah, there is a way that doesn't require surgery. You'll have to go to the Mayo Clinic and get it done, but it could be done non-surgically."
Ah,
now that's me. All right, I did, as I did a medical TV show for 8.5 years. I have quite a bit of medical knowledge. I'm fortunate that I've been a media guy for most of my career. So I can ask and I can ask. And here I'd got an opinion from an internist type of person, and then I got an opinion from a surgeon, both of whom said you need surgery done, and I had to keep on asking. And my wife did fine, never had to have the surgery done. She had the work done non-surgically, and she's been fine ever since. Well, this could have been devastating to her, because the recovery period was a long period, and parts of her system would have been removed, and you're never the same after that. So just because insurance covers it doesn't necessarily mean that you need it. There's some people who are really good communicators, and there's some people who aren't. And there's some people who are totally above board, and there's some people who are not. And understand, just because you've gotten a degree, just because you've gone to school for the length of time that you've gone, does not necessarily mean that you graduated from the School of Ethics.
That's a good point.
So ask. And if you're not sure, yes, get another opinion. Second opinions are cheap. By comparison with the procedure that's going to be done. Yeah, it takes a little bit of extra time. Yeah, you have to find somebody else. I understand. And perhaps the first opinion is right. Well, you get verification of that. But there is a reason for second opinions in every aspect of life, including periodontal care.
Makes good sense. So we've been talking with Dr. Lee Sheldon with the office of Dr. Sheldon and Furtado, often called Solid Bite. And the topic for today has been, is it possible I don't need periodontal treatment? We're gonna kind of cap there, and then we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of things on the helping senior side for just a minute. But I wanted to, before we do that, Dr. Sheldon, if you could restate how that works with the helping seniors, where you call up the office and say, "Hey, listen, you guys have piqued my curiosity. I'd like to come in, and there's a great way to do it that actually benefits helping seniors as a nonprofit."
Sure. Let the person who answers the phone here know that you have been, that you heard us on Helping Seniors of Brevard Radio. And, first thing you have to do is call the office, don't you? So call the office at 321-259-8000, 321-259-8000. Any one of our great staff will understand the Solid Bite Gives Back program, and you say you heard us on Helping Seniors of Brevard, and they'll explain all the details on how you write a check to Helping Seniors of Brevard, and you get the entire examination, including a CT scan, and a good, long, thorough examination here for $50 to Helping Seniors.
That really makes it a win-win-win, because it's great for the person that's trying to understand what's going on. It's really a big help to us as Helping Seniors, and for you as the dental medical professional, really gives you the tools you need to really be in a position to give the right answers to somebody who's trying to figure out what to do in that situation. So again, Dr. Lee Sheldon, and hey, so we're gonna spend a minute and talk about our fundraiser, because that was really it's so important. People do not understand that without your help, we can't do the work we do with Helping Seniors. In fact, Joe has had a bunch of letters out to folks that have supported the organization over the years. He calls it the annual fund drive. He says, I don't want to beat people over the heads and say you got to do something all the time, but we really do need your help to keep things rolling. So if you got one of those letters, by all means, it came with an envelope, send back. If you just want to make a straight donation, you can do that anytime by calling 321-473-7770. Nancy Deerdorf will be happy to help you with that. And of course, you can do that. You can donate online. Also, there's a tab there on the Helping Seniors of Brevard.org website. But one of the fun ways to get involved in the fundraising is something that Joe started years ago with car dealer AJ Hires, when Joe was trying to get those Joe's Clubs built for the Brevard Alzheimer's. And they came up with a car raffle as a good way to raise money for charity. And so now we brought the same idea over to Helping Seniors, and this is now into our 7th annual Helping Seniors car raffle fundraiser. How does it work? You buy a ticket, 1 for $25, $5 for $100 donation to Helping Seniors of Brevard. And that gives you really 3 things. Number 1, you're supporting the work of Helping Seniors. Number 2, you get to pick your choice of a great car. Now, it's one car. AJ makes one car available, but they all come from his dealerships, which is what makes it fun, because you get to pick which car you want to win. And this year, you have a choice, once again, of a Dodge Challenger, a Dodge Camaro, a Chevrolet Camaro. And I might point out that they are talking about this being the last year for muscle cars. So this could be maybe a last chance to pick up a Dodge Challenger or a Chevrolet Camaro. We'll have to see. But you could also take a Mazda Miata convertible. You could choose a Kia Sportage. And this year, AJ's opening up a Mitsubishi dealership right there on US 1. You might have seen it if you're tooling up and down US 1 in Melbourne. That's getting ready to open up. So he's chipping in a Mitsubishi Outlander as well. So you pick the car that you want to win when we pull your winning ticket. When does this all happen? That's the third thing that you get when you get a ticket is Saturday, October 7th. Mark Pylock with the American Muscle Car Museum opens his doors and allows us in to tour his amazing automobile collection. He's got someplace north of 400 cars now in there. It's incredible. And he also provides a great night out. There's snacks, there's beer and wine and soda, and it's just a pleasant night out. And then we find out that maybe you are going to be the winner, and then you're going to pick which car you want to take home. So you got to be in it to win it. Dr. Sheldon, talk about you and I know a lot of the staff have had the chance to be there and see some of that, and it's really so amazing. It's just an amazing night at the museum.
Well, first thing, Mark takes good care of you. I mean,
yes.
with the food that's there, Mark just does. He donates back. I think if you take a look at that museum, you take a look at that, it's just tremendous with the cars so beautifully taken care of. This is something, there's some things that we have that nobody else has, and we have that muscle car museum. If you haven't seen it, you've got to see it. And if you have seen it, Mark changes those cars around. He buys and sells, and he has new items there for you to, for you to look. But you're also working and associating yourself with and talking with people who have a common bond. We all have a common bond with helping seniors. And so whether it's you are helping people or whether you provide help or whether you just want to talk with somebody else who's in your particular position. We talk about Nancy being such a great resource person, and she is. And you couldn't get a better person than Nancy handling the phone. But there are sometimes you may run into somebody and say, well, I have this problem. Who did you see? And you may be able to network with somebody and get an answer right there. And save yourself an awful lot of time and money and get whatever item done, get it done right the first time. And then, of course, there is the auction. The auction is exciting, and you get the opportunity of seeing the cars and going through the excitement. Am I going to win it? Am I not going to win it? Am I going to get a consolation prize? What am I going to get? So it's a great evening.
Yeah, no, thanks, Dr. Lee Sheldon with Solid Bite. And yes, and you get your tickets. If you're listening, it's easy enough to do. You call Nancy at 321-473-770 or helpingseniorscarraffle.com. That's it. We'll see you next week for the next edition of Helping Seniors Radio.